clear determinant that shows that government policies are actually translated in actual performance has to do with from the point of policy conception to the point of the service delivery. And that includes from the point of fabricating the policy to designing it to creating for budgeting, procurement, funding, and implementation, as well as strategies to carry out the recommendations that have been listed in the policy.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to welcome you to the Public Sector Leadership Forum organized by the Center for Public Sector Governance. Center for Public Sector Governance is a subdivision of the Society for Corporate Governance focused on public sector conversations.
Governance for performance, global practices to create public value is both timely and critical as we reflect on how effective leadership and governance in public sector can translate into stronger institutions and better outcome for citizens. So we honor to have both those that are online and those that are in the room from different parastatals and ministries to join us in this important conversation. To formally set the tone for today's forum, it's my privilege to call on the Chief Executive Officer of the Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria to deliver the opening address. So with a round of applause, may I especially invite Mrs. Chioma Mother to give the opening address. A round of applause, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, BC, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. I'll just give the opening address, then I speak from my heart. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to welcome you to the Public Sector Leadership Forum organized by the Center for Public Sector Governance. Center for Public Sector Governance is a subdivision of the Society for Corporate Governance focused on public sector conversations. Our theme today is governance for performance, global practices to create great public value. It's both timely and important. It challenges us to look beyond governance as a framework and focus on how leadership, institutions, and effective governance can translate into better performance and meaningful value for the citizens. As public sector leaders and stakeholders, we share responsibility to strengthen the institution, embrace effective global practices, and build systems that deliver measurable results. We are therefore delighted to have distinguished experts, practitioners with us today to share their insights and perspectives. I look forward to a rich and impactful conversation, and I encourage us to actively engage with the ideas and lessons that will emerge from this forum. Once again, I welcome you and I wish you a productive and rewarding forum. At this point, I'd like to just say a bit of thank you to our speakers that have graciously accepted to be here today. And we have a room full of doctors. If you see from the list of our speakers. So we have Dr. Brown. She'll be joining us online. I hope she's there. Dr. Brown, thank you and welcome. Indeed a pleasure. We had a dry run yesterday and she had said that she had to cut short her vacation to be with us today. So she'll be joining from Canada. And for my maths and time calculation, this is about 7 a.m. in Canada. So please a round of applause for our keynote speaker, Dr. Brown. Like I said, we have an array of doctors, right? So we have Dr. Obi. He came from Abuja just to, grace this occasion. So thank you so much, sir, for coming, and you're welcome. Dr. Okoefa is having an interview, but again, on behalf of the management and the board of advisory of the Center for Public Sector Governance, I say welcome to him. And he has been a great part of the Center for Public Sector Governance. I'd just like to give the background of really the sector before we start with the keynote address. The Society for Corporate Governance is a not-for-profit organization that is committed to promoting corporate governance in the private sector. Yes, please. You can go. And we have done that passionately, I must say, and effectively for 20 years, where we share governance lessons, where we help businesses to develop their corporate governance framework, where we help regulators to also develop different corporate governance codes, guidelines, and laws. And we have done that for 20 years. Only 2 years ago, we thought that it is necessary for us to replicate this impact that we are having in the private sector to the public sector, because we believe that the public sector plays an integral part of the economic development, even for the private sector as well. So that is the reason why we thought it wise to establish the Center for Public Sector Governance, being chaired by Dr. Ernest Ndukwe. He's the chairman of MTN. We are hopeful that he will join us today in person, but I know he will join virtually if he cannot attend in person. So on that note, I would like to open this forum. Please make it interactive. It's a small room, but we have a bigger audience online. So please make it interactive, ask questions, and this is just the beginning of a journey of excellence, a journey of leadership, a journey of institutionalizing our public sector. So thank you so much and welcome again. Thank you.
A round of applause for Ms. Inyora. Thank you so much, Ms. Lodi, for that insightful open address. We will now go to the keynote address. At this point, I would like to invite our moderator for the day. I'll go through our dissertation quickly. Imajo Madugu is a partner at HENA, a member of the firm's corporate and commercial transactions, banking and finance, energy and telecoms practice units. She has over a decade of experience advising clients on complex commercial transactions, regulatory matters, dispute resolution, legal research. Nima is recognized for her ability to navigate the intersection of law, policy, and business. She advised local and international companies across sectors including private equity, telecommunications, energy, fast-moving commerce goods, and banking. Her experience includes advising on major infrastructure funds, merger and acquisition, real estate investment trusts, banking licenses, energy transactions, and telecommunication regulation. At Kena's regulated compliance officer with the Nigerian Security and Exchange Commission, she has extensive knowledge of Nigeria's capital markets and securities regulation framework, with particular expertise in regulatory strategy, risk mitigation, corporate governance, commercial sustainability. She holds a senior management program qualification from the Lagos Business School, a research-based LLM with honors from Tilburg University, the Netherlands, and LLM with honors from the University of Essex, UK, and a BL from the Nigerian Law School. She's a barrister and solicitor for the Supreme Court of Nigeria and a member of Nigerian Bar Association.
So I'm here, and this is my absolute pleasure to be in the midst of all the doctors, and also an honor to welcome and to give the recital for Dr. Brown. Dr. Deborah Brown is an internationally recognized governance thought leader with over 3 decades of experience helping boards, governance, and public institutions strengthen governance leadership. She is the founder of the Professional Director Institute, an architect of an integrated principles-based governance system used across the public, private, and not-for-profit sectors. Her governance education programs have been translated and delivered in more than 65 countries. Dr. Brown has advised governments, state enterprises, regulators, healthcare and educational institutions, indigenous governments, not-for-profit organizations, and private corporations. She has also served as a CEO and held several board leadership positions, including board chair and governance committee chair, giving her extensive practical experience in both executive and board leadership. An accomplished keynote speaker, advisor, and author, she has written and co-authored 5 books on governance. She holds a directorate in leadership, a Master of Divinity, and professional doctor designations.
Over the last 3 decades, I've had the absolute privilege of working with boards and governments and regulators, state enterprises, corporations here in Canada and around the world. And although our countries are different, I've discovered that the challenges facing those who govern are becoming increasingly similar all around the world. We have different cultures, different governments, different economies, yet remarkably similar governance systems and remarkably similar challenges and remarkably similar questions. We all ask questions like, how do we strengthen public trust? How do we govern wisely in an increasingly complex world? How do we create sustainable impact and measurable value for the people that we serve? So I would think every person in this room has accepted the mantle of leadership because of something you saw. You saw the potential of a better future, a stronger institution, healthier communities, greater opportunities, more trustworthy government. Leadership always begins with vision. But leadership alone is just not enough. Those entrusted with governance carry this unique responsibility. You're entrusted with a public trust. You have public resources, public institutions, and ultimately the well-being of the citizens those institutions exist to serve. And so that responsibility is both an honor and a burden. Across the globe, I have watched governance evolve. We have become increasingly sophisticated in our governance systems. We have better governance codes and guidelines, better reporting, better technology, risk management and compliance. We have better board evaluations, better governance systems, and all of these are important. But I sometimes wonder whether if our pursuit of better governance practices, in that pursuit that we have unintentionally shifted our attention, we become increasingly focused on what we do and not focused enough on why we do it. Practices matter. Governance practices, they matter. But practices are not the foundation. Principles are. Practices will change. Principles will endure. Practices respond to the circumstances we're in. Principles are what will guide us through them. And in governance, if governance is the system by which organizations are directed and controlled, and it is, that's the definition of it, then principles are what give that system life and purpose and direction. And without enduring principles, governance becomes little more than just a collection of activity, collections of practices. The organizations in this forum have challenged us to think about creating sustainable impact and measurable value for citizens. And I'd like to suggest that public value is not created by governments being busy, doing busy work. Not because boards meet frequently, boards of directors, not because reports are submitted in a timely way. Public value is created when the leaders entrusted with governance faithfully fulfill the purpose for that which has been entrusted to them. Citizens experience public value when those governors build institutions that are worthy of their trust. And that's why governance matters, not because governance is an end in itself, but because the citizens are. Yet every leader faces that same danger. It's not corruption, not incompetence, something much more subtle than that. We gradually can lose our sight. Pressure has this way of narrowing our vision. Success can convince us that yesterday's answers are sufficient for tomorrow's questions. Tradition can become more visible than purpose. Activity can begin to look like accomplishment, that busy work. Confidence can begin to replace the evidence. And little by little, without intending to, our perception drifts away from reality, not because we lack integrity, but because we're human. So that's why I've come to believe that one of the greatest principles in governance is measurement. Not measurement as numbers per se, not dashboards or key performance indicators, not audits. Those are important. They're valuable tools in our governance toolkit, but they're not the principle. And measurement exists because governance is responsible for not merely for acting, but for knowing whether what we believe to be true is, in fact, true. Measurement reveals what's true. It allows reality to speak. It exposes the difference between motion and progress, between activity and real accomplishment, between confidence and evidence. It asks really one simple question: what has been revealed to be true? And that question really does change everything. So, for example, imagine a government launches a major program to reduce the time people wait for an essential public service. And that program gets implemented, the budget gets spent, the staff are trained, new technology is deployed, and thousands, hundreds, thousands of people are served. And we might call that success, right? But did wait times actually go down? Until we measure the result against the standard we set, we don't know. We know what we did. We don't yet know what we accomplished. Measurement may reveal that waiting times fell dramatically, or that despite all the activity, people are still waiting just as long. And that's the moment measurement gives us our sight back. It reveals the difference between what we believed we were producing and what people were actually experiencing. Because when people lose sight, they need measurement to reveal the truth, to give them their sight back. And so there's 5 things that governing bodies around the world need to be doing differently right now if they're going to remain fit to govern, so that they have the capacity to govern. So first, they need to remain strategically agile while staying anchored in purpose. Now, the world is moving faster than our traditional planning cycles. Plans will change, assumptions will change, circumstances will change, but purpose should not. Strategic agility means governing bodies continually scanning the environment, testing their assumptions, and adapting their direction without losing sight of why the institution exists in the first place. And so the question to ask is, what has changed since we last met that could materially affect our assumptions, our priorities, or our direction? You've got to continually be asking that question. Second, we need to steward trust intentionally. So again, around the world, wherever I see it happening, trust in institutions is increasingly fragile. And public trust cannot be just assumed simply because an institution has been given the authority to govern. Trust must be earned, it must be stewarded, it must be measured, and it must be renewed. So don't ask only, are we communicating what we're doing? We will want to ask, do the citizens we serve trust us? And what's the evidence telling us about why they either do trust us or why they don't?
I would also like to welcome Dr. Peifa. the Managing Director of the Nigerian Railway Corporation. He is a seasoned public administrator and transportation reform expert. Dr. Okeifa has over 2 decades of leadership experience in Nigeria's transport sector. He began his public service as a special advisor on transportation to the governor of Lagos State before serving as Commissioner for Transportation, where he championed landmark reforms that transformed traffic management and public transportation, including the revitalization of the Lagos State Traffic Management Authority. As the Managing Director of the Nigerian Railway Corporation, Dr. Okeifa is driving efforts to reposition Nigeria's railway system by enhancing connectivity, improving operational efficiency, facilitating commerce, and supporting national economic growth through railway transportation. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Okeifa. So I will just start off the questions. Dr. Okeifa, from a governance perspective, we seem to always hear about the principles of concerning governance, and I think that Dr. Brown also mentioned some of the capabilities or capacities, the 5 ones that she speaks to. From your experience leading a public enterprise, what does good governance look like when it has to translate to an actual service that citizens experience every day? From our perspective, the citizens have an idea, but from a government perspective, what is it that you anticipate that good governance looks like after all the effort is put into translating the goals of the government?
Good afternoon, and at the same time, good morning. Because in my own sector, it is always morning. We don't have afternoon, we don't have evening. The day is continuous. Now, hearing from Dr. David and moving forward, first, let us take governance, not just relating to public sector. Because whether it's public or private governance is different. The expectations will be different, the principles are the same. And we should take it away, in that way I should take it away from the boardroom, take it away from government policies, take it away from committees and take it to the streets. That's when we come, whether it is good or bad governance. In my own understanding, the way the citizens view governance is how it affects them. Regardless of what you do, you just do what is in it for you. And we can see that clearly all over the world. It's not just about Nigeria, it's not just about Africa. Same thing in the United States, same thing in Europe. People want to know what does it have to do to them. For those of us in government, especially in public service, we also owe the people an extra trust that think about them, and they will most take governance to them where they are. In my own personal understanding, taking an example from where I started. I started as a teacher, and in the secondary school, we teaching mathematics, and then progressively being a lecturer at the university, teaching some complex stuff, biochemistry, intermediary methodology. Most of the students in my class are not interested in that. They just have to do something. So I have a responsibility to make them interested. Now, talking about my role in public service in Lagos State and currently at the regulator, what people want from government is you're in charge for it. I want to use the train. I want it to be safe. I want it to be timely. I don't want to pay too much. And I want to get there faster. Whatever your issues, they are not concerned. You shouldn't even make that problem. What should be their concern is you have been chosen, but just like this is our purpose, solution. So give me the solution. So for me, the way I would put it is put it in the face of the people and their expectations. And don't forget, we have many people who talk about their expectations. So you have to find a way to make it what they call the global practice. Something that can cover the expectations of everybody. So if I use railway, once again as an example, I keep telling my people, I want to see the data, I want to see the figure. How many did they move? How many wanted to move? How have we been able to do it? There was a 3 minutes within 2 minutes of the time usually, the way I will data, we have complaints. What are the complaints? Are there things we should have done? Can we solve them? Who made the complaints? Can I get their phone number? I want to speak to them, and I think that will make them feel, because you can't answer all the questions. You can't provide all the solutions in one phase, but you must be able to stay in the face of the people. Let them see you as a solution. Then they will believe there is a governance of this.
Thank you very much for that. The next question we have is for Dr. Obi. And so from a global perspective, we have heard and we understand that the expectation of what governance is. From your experience across the public sector, where do you see the biggest gap between the governance principles that we aspire to meet on a global scale and how institutions actually operate in practice? And I'm sure you'll also explain to us how, in your experience, some of those issues have been solved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, CSP, CPSG, for this. If I were to identify the single biggest gap, is to be the gap between our formal architecture and our actual institutional behavior. Nigeria as a country is not short of policies, not short of laws, secular strategic plans, or any other reform initiatives. The difficulty lies in translating these policies and initiatives into consistent practice. In our own principle, our public institutions should aspire, or rather they aspire to be merit-based, result-driven, transparent, but in practice, problems still do frequently arise. First and foremost, institutions are sometimes driven by personalities, rather by strengthening the system. And it's not good when this happens. Because when this happens, the procedure within the institutions will now be built around the person who occupies the office. When the person who occupies the office now expires, maybe the memory of the office and all the program goes to the person rather than staying with the institution for continuity and sustainability. Secondly, we often place greater emphasis on compliance rather than outcomes.
How can public institutions better understand actual experience of citizens and use the experience to improve the way services are designed and delivered? I understand that you mentioned during your answer to the first question about saying that what data do you have you collated it? I'd like to speak to someone. I don't know if you can give us some real life examples of some of the situations or instances where this has happened and how you've been able to use the data gathered or the feedback from citizens to drive actual change.
Thank you very much. First, let us stop designing services for the citizens based on our own experience of the service. We should, first of all, try to understand what does the citizens want from government. And the very first example here, when we were in Lagos, I worked with Governor Fashola. And the first 3 months, we only had the local government in Lagos. 1 day or 2 days per local government. And he has his own plans, he has his own program. And we went to some local governments. What you think you want to do for them is not what you want. So immediately after the meetings, we get back to the cabinet, we discuss, and we award contracts immediately. Immediately. Go and build that school, go and do that drainage, go and do this. So when they go to my local governments, now this is the way you go. When coming to your local government, people there will be asked to identify where the government should visit, where you think the problems are. They bring in some of the stakeholders. And when we got to my local government, they said they don't want roads. We got to another part of the local government, said they want roads. Then we got to another area we got to, we saw that the workplace is always flooded, always the base. We now discovered that what that local government they want to finish, not roads. And it took 3 years for us to complete the drainage plan. I'm not talking about constructing the drainage. So that local government, you will assume we have no project. As soon as we completed the drainage plan, we solved the drainage issue. We stopped having deaths. After every rain in Agege, somebody will die.
There are instances where there would be, or the person that's supposed to execute would have executed, but the intended outcome is not actually achieved. In your view, how should we ultimately hold people accountable when the activity or the actions have been concluded, but the intended outcome has not been achieved? And how do you think we can rectify such issues?
Thank you for that. Let me start by making a statement that A policy has not succeeded because it was approved, it was launched, it was funded. No. Policy succeeds only when it produces measurable and sustainable improvement in the life of the citizens. That's what I'm talking about, the value. And going back to the nitty-gritty of the question, there is a gap between when government says she wants to do something and at the end, how does it affect the life of the citizens? In my experience, that implementation gap, as it were, does not occur at one single point. It actually occurs at every critical handover point between the conception and the frontline delivery. And the narrative, the examples given already, and you say to this point. When I mean examples, I mean the communal examples here in Lagos State, as stated by my co-panelists, gives you that example where you can see that at each point of the policy, which is based by stakeholders, people in the community, their perception, the viewpoints are incorporated in taking some policy changes to be able to meet the end demand. So the first gap is between the policy design and the implementation plan. At this point, responsibilities may not be clearly assigned, and the risks that are involved may not be anticipated, and the officials that are expected to execute it, the policy are not sometimes adequately involved. In this case, the citizens. Example you gave of last month, that the citizens, in doing that policy, they have to incorporate the end users, those who benefit from those officers working, to be able to meet the desired end of that policy. Now, the second gap there is the disconnect between budgeting, the policy itself, then budgeting, procurement, and then the human resource deployment. Plan and budgeting are too often treated as separate entities, but they are not, because the simplicity is that one speaks to the other. Budget should actually be the financial expression of government policy. When government comes up with a strategic plan, to execute that plan, she has to provide adequate budget to be able to fund it. So sometimes, when government comes up with a plan, there is no budget to fund it, and that plan will not come to fruition within the fiscal year. So one has to do with the coordination. By the time government comes up with a new policy, ministries, extra ministerial departments and agencies, that policy will cut across all of them. There is need for them government to create what we refer to as an interministerial committee, and then give one of them the leadership to be able to drive the coordination and implementation of that policy. Where that is missing to the meeting the goals of that administrative policy will also be truncated. And the fourth one is discontinuity. Discontinuity is because change in leadership occurs around the person who is occupying the office. Projects are branded, rebranded, suspended, or abandoned, all because somebody has left office. Institutional memory is lost. Public office now, rather than build it around institutions, it should be built around rather than build around personalities, it should be built around institutions. The former president of America, Barack Obama, said Africa's problem is because Africa is building government around personalities rather than building it around institutions. So when those personalities leave office, all that they stand for to also go with them. But when it's built around institutions, they remain viable and they stay intact. And finally, there's a weakness in monitoring and consequence management. Yes, this is an event. This what we're having is an event. Like any all that events that government do outline. In our own society, we measure the amount of meetings we have, the amount of funds that are released or workshops that are being conducted, rather than the outcomes of those things. We should rather measure the outcomes that have been achieved rather than the fiscal year, the quarter. So how many meetings do we have in the quarter? How many things we do? Activities are being counted. But the impactful value was actually measured, and that's where governance is actually felt. What should be done is that performance report should not simply report what was done, but it should rather reveal, as a result of the activity, what has changed, what has come of life, what has moved, okay, why are targets missed, and who must take corrective action. So to close this gap, every major policy should have a practical delivery architecture. should have clear outcomes, baselines, timelines, milestones, as well as risk and named accountable officers. Planning is so key. Budgeting, performance reports must be fully aligned. Cross-government policies should have empowered delivery teams. Now we must involve frontline officers and intended beneficiaries early. I still go back to the example given. The frontline officers in that example were the citizens. And then the officers who were deployed in that were those who were meant to interact with the citizens and get the feedback. And then the way it was going was to give them adequate enabling environment to be able to execute their function. Because at that point, the implementation or the knowledge of implementation resides with those who are closest to the problem. So the decisional community should be protected. Competent officers should be properly deployed and supported. In Nigeria, we must move from a culture of policy announcement to a culture of delivering discipline. The last example I want to give is like, a politician may come to a village, he's campaigning. Now, 2027 election will soon start. The general presidential and parliamentary campaign has kicked off already by the INEC timetable. Now, politicians come into the field. When a politician goes to a community and says, I want to build a borehole for a community, and does not consult with the citizens of the community whether that's actually what they want, he's bound to fail. He's supposed to engage with them. They may need a market square, not a community, not a borehole. If he goes and builds a borehole, they won't vote for him because he has not given them what they wanted. But if he does what he has, so what I'm just trying to do, he has engaged. That's why he got stakeholder mapping. He has brought them into the picture. He's brought their buying in, and together he now goes ahead and does what it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the response, Doctor. You spoke about one of the things you mentioned, there were quite a few, and I think we might touch on those during the rest of the panel session. One of the things you touched about was regarding continuity of systems, and you also referred to the election that we have coming up next year. So I have this question, and it goes to both Dr. B and Dr. Prefa. How do we achieve change? How do we set up stronger institutions long term, knowing fully well that one of the core issues we have is about institutional continuity and due process? So in your, Dr. Prefa, let's start first. In your view, how can we maintain some sort of continuity, professionalism, structured institutional values that can go on for years to come, as opposed to it ending in just separate four-year gaps instead?
Thank you very much. When Dr. Debbie spoke, she referred to the issue of when you do recruitment. I think she was responding to one of the questions. You recruit, she said, recruitment should be based on the purpose rather than the position. So the same thing for leadership, for continuity. If we look at getting people into governance, I'm not talking of just elected. Elected, you don't have an option. They're going to vote. So the people decide who they want to vote, and people have different preferences. So the worst person can never win an election. It doesn't have to be the we're talking of institutional sustainability now. If you have, in some instances, we know, if you watch the British Parliament, you see how they tackle the issue. And once the person
seeing them, but it's white, so I don't want it to show.
The parliamentary system allows him to step down, but the presidential system doesn't allow you to do that. It doesn't emphasize. So you are going to go. But when you watch the American system, you see the president sign a lot of executive bill, and citizens have challenged it. And some citizens, majority citizens have won. So he has lost, he has also won. What that tells you is that the judiciary is sustainable. The citizens are informed, and the system is working. So how do you now put up such a system as a global practice? It has to come from the recruitment stage. Recruitment being by election or being by working for a company or whatever. We have seen family businesses. The recruitment process is genetic. The parents is still in there. We have seen companies that have survived. We will see that it is their staffing, their personnel that keeps the company going. Even if the company dies, we will see it resurrected through one of those who have worked in that company. Coming to governance now, public sector governance. The first thing we should be striving towards getting is get the right people to lead. If you have the right people to lead and they are not just self-obsessed, they are truly genuine in governance, you will see policies that are people-oriented. If you have people-oriented policies and programs, it is most likely to survive. Why are people still calling for some government? But we wish during the time of social government, during the time of social president, it was not like this. It's because the person did not that. But why should it not be that after the person leaves office, people complain? It has to do with institutions. Without which institutions, I must confess to you. And because I've served in several places, I've left and I've looked back. And when I get some appointments too, I look at what you see on ground despite government investment. And I work with series of levels of public servants, and I also operate in the private sector, also consulting for big companies before that. And you see that the places that have survived are those that have strong institutions, and also those that have survived also are those that have strong personalities who can continue to drive. Some people are scared. So what we need to preach more is best practices, standard operating procedures. And right now, just last month, we instituted in Nigeria about 180 new standard operating procedures. Because if you have to, I train as a chemist, analytical chemist, and I work in nanoparticle levels. One can be different from two. The economy will say 2 is better than 1, but in my own field, 2 and 1 can also be the same. You have to subject them to statistical analysis to it. So what I have found out is what you call validation processes. A system, an action, an activity must be validated and must be found that regardless of individuals that will carry it out, regardless of the town, the state, the climate, whatever, the result will consistently and continuously be the same. So that is what we do in the lab, in the science. Before we say A is different from B, we must subject it to ruggedness, robustness, and validation processes. If we add those as a culture, especially for public workers, take them through those processes that they use in approving drugs. Sorry, call it drugs. That's American language. Medications. Before a drug, a medication gets into the market, it must pass all validation processes. It must be bound to be robust, rugged, and so many other things. Don't let me put that. So what we need to do is have standard operating procedures. I want to commend the immediate outgoing head of service. I think that's one area she made emphasis on. People should, in any office, if you are going to go out and enter and pick your vehicle, the procedure, the processes must be the same, regardless of whether you are a man, a woman, you are short or tall. If you have those standards, what will give you that is that not the standard operating procedure. We don't have it in this country. In our system here, even when you have it, people internalize it and think it is they are the operating procedure. I can measure the thing plumb. You can't use your eyes to plumb the clothes. You must take the plumbing machine, plumb it. That's the process. And in the sciences, you cannot even say you have done it. Another person must like that he saw you doing it, or he confirmed that your calculations are right. So when that takes me to what I read is a brief, and I saw that he's been involved in. I became scared. So I'm not who is a training trainer. You see, we need to inculcate that. It's not in public service. It's not there. Everybody becomes a team god. A driver who is to drive the train knows that he must not go above 50. And he's looking at his time and he's trying 52. I know, you go to jail. In America, where I train, you go to jail. The company will get fined, then you will go to jail. Because you signed to go to jail. All the day you start to work in the scientific drug manufacturing lab. So people should learn to work on the procedure. When you see something, don't apply the brake, apply it. When you come down and report this way, call this person. The person who is down there should do. If everybody does what they are supposed to do according to the books, institutions will not fail. A strong person cannot change it because you will say, oh, that the thing not be like that right now for people. Because we have to report according to the books. And I will say it again, he mentioned when he was talking about processes and the things. We must, for every activity in the public sector, just like they do in the private sector, we must get to introduce standard operating procedures. And when you need to deviate, you must get clearance. And when you do deviate, in the absence of the clearance, you must document that you deviated, and you must seek clearance afterwards. If we do that, I'm saying this because sometimes it bleeds. I feel the pain when errors are committed. The elevator is not working. You did not report it. Then a customer complain. Why should I get to know the elevator, the escalator? It does not work. My procedure says, once you say that it is not work, put it on a particular platform where everybody will see it. So if you had put it on the platform and the customer calls us, you can say, oh, that we are working. So if we keep a good system, officers will obey, system will evolve, and over time, we have a society, a governance system that we all will be proud. We don't need to run a task and looking for solution. Right here in our system, there are people who are ready to work, provided there are standard operating procedures. Like he said, don't punish an officer for what he is not supposed to be punished for. Promote those that deserve to be promoted, make everything go perfectly. Parents should not go and do job for their children. When those things start occurring, people will get to know that the system works. So we have systems that can work. We also have people that will make it work. All we need to do is to keep pushing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Obi?
Yeah, thank you, sir. My cap on that, let me just start with a quote. One of the ingredients of success is to be consistent and persistent. When consistency is applied at the task, success is attained. The result of that success is kept for centuries when persistence is applied. And that comes to governance and the general society. Public sector reforms, the improvements therein are kept when they are institutionalized as good global practices. So that when we change the environment, what we see reflected in the society, when we come out home, we also see it. But everything goes with intentionality and the tenacity of purpose on the part of those in leadership to deliver and leave legacy when they exit office, so that the institution continues even after they have left, for younger leaders to come up and occupy same and build on the foundations that the older ones have left. Now, speaking to what you asked, you could see that reforms become institutionalized when they cease to be regarded as people's personal initiative. Yes, an officer may think it out, but it's not his own. Society owns the reform. And he does it because he's a leader. John Maxwell said a leader is someone who has the ability to influence others for good. So it becomes the normal way when it is institutionalized. And institutionalization, a good policy is kept in society via legislation, so that it can be truncated when government changes or an individual comes and takes the new office. So I would suggest that every reform should be embedded in 6 areas. Now, title those areas as rules, roles, routines, resources, records, and results. First of all, rules. And that speaks to the standard operating procedure that he had mentioned. Good practices in every society are put in every approved policy, regulations, service standards, and implementation guidelines. So the reform that exists only in speech, in personal instructions, or hard doc committee is not likely to survive when they are not incorporated as standard operating procedures within the organization. With respect to the role, every person has a responsibility. That's why when we talk about implementation strategies, we want to say, who do you hold responsible for carrying out that task? Somebody must open the gate today. That person in that implementation, in that strategy, is the person that will carry out that task. If he fails in that performance management pillar, he has failed to meet his own role on that task. So responsibility for the reform was incorporated into the formal organizational structure, clear job descriptions, and delegated authority. So ownership must not be signed exclusively in the office of the leader or a small reform team. The wider the legitimate institutional ownership, the less vulnerable that reform becomes. I speak to routine, the third one. Reform must be integrated into everyday workflow. This includes planning, budgeting, procurement, reporting again, staff appraisal, and decision making. Once a good practice becomes part of the institution operating system, the standard operating procedures again, abandoning it now becomes very difficult. It's now embedded, immersed in the organizational workflow matrix of that environment. Everybody knows that this is the way it's done here, and it must be done appropriately and correctly. Now, with respect to resources, reforms must have adequate funding. They must be skilled. The personnel, appropriate personnel with good skill must be deployed to take care of those reforms. Technology must be applied and operational support must be given. Now, records. Institutions preserve their memory through proper documentation. Incoming leaders should have a clear account of ongoing priorities. That's why when there's an office change from one person going to the he hands over all he has done in form of a handover note. And handover notes will detail everything his office has operated upon to the subsequent officer, who now knows, okay, I'm also towing the same line as the other. And then reforms must be tied to measurable institutional and citizen outcomes. Still talking about performance indicators and KPIs as we know them. So for us to build consistency, that's why I started with that quote. For us to build consistency, so that this consistency will change, officers should participate in designing the changes, which is why I also said that in policy design, from conception to the end, each stopgap, there must be adequate participation of the end of the stakeholders. Everybody must know his own role to understand their benefits, and people are more likely to protect the system they help to build and from which they can see tangible value. So institutionalization as itself, being a legal practice, being a standard operating step, mean that does not mean rather that every reform should be permanent, or every change, every major step should be rigid. Policies are not cast in stone. They can be reviewed, they can be amended. If it's hurting the populace, you can review it. If this step the government has taken and the populace are crying for the effect of it, the government can listen to the public and make some amendments and change it. Truly, the test is simple. If performance declines after the departure of a leader or somebody acquired an office, then that reform was probably personalized but not institutionalized. So to the point I'm moving from personalization of office to institutionalization, which said the citizens' own viewpoints have been engaged. Let me come back to my constituency. Just yesterday, the government announced, our president announced the new head of service to replace the outgoing one. I'm part of that bureaucracy. Now, the outgoing head of service and past head of service, the outgoing head of service builds on the other foundation that the former heads of service have built. But to show you that the public service is unique, it has foreseen the future from where it is. Because currently we have a big strategic plan running from 2020 to 2050. We refer to that the Federal Civil Service Strategy Implementation Plan. And we took it in 5 trenches, 5-year trench. We just finished one from 2021 to 2025, and we started a new one, about to start a new one from 2026 to 2030, which will cut down to 2050. Now, all that we have been doing in running these plans is not built around the heads of service, whoever is. Any head of service that come and go, that plan stays in place. so that the succeeding one builds on that strategic plan and continues till infinity. Now, who is the benefit of it is the public service. The public service becomes strengthened because there is a driving, rolling strategic plan moving, and it is being reviewed at the end of each medium-term plan. So it goes to say that in any organization, no matter how large it is, from public to semi-public to private to semi-private to even to microcosm of it, plans really will help that organization to achieve its goal, because the plan will set out the vision, the mission, the objectives, as it were, then provide adequate funding, resource personnel, procurement factors, and adequate legal backing with effective monitoring and review, and bring their own goals to fruition. You could see that with that, personalities in offices are not strengthened. Rather, the space, the institution, at whatever level, are strengthened, and we will outlive those who occupy that space and that systems. So truly transformative leaders don't merely produce results during their tenure. No, that leader will leave behind capable people, functioning systems, documented processes, sustainable resources, and a culture of accountability that enables that institution to continue delivering long after the leader has left. I just gave an example. So an outgoing head of service is going, but I can tell you that if she has left a legacy of achievements behind, that the incoming will now need to build upon and do greater than even the our predecessor has done. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, doctors. We're rounding up at this point. Apologies again for the slight delay because of technical issues. We ran over time. So before we go into the Q&A session, in one sentence, I'd just like the doctors to give us, Dr. Pefa and Dr. Obi, in one sentence, if you could give us what your one practical change, just one practical change you think we can implement in the short term to improve governance in the system, to deliver greater value for citizens. Just one change, and then we go into the Q&A session. One change that you think would deliver value to citizens.
Okay, personally, I would like to see a stronger culture, or a culture with stronger measurability of performance or programs. And that is to say, what do we promise as managers of public trust? What did we deliver? What we deliver can it be sustained? If we develop that culture as public servants or anybody in the area of governance, that whatever I do can be measured. And not just that it can be measured, it can be measured against what I promise or what I am expected to do. And when I leave, it can be sustained. And where those who come after me cannot sustain it, the society can come back to pursue, provided that is the right thing. And when you have that, you will see that we have a kind of system we deserve. And people will start feeling concerned. I am asked to go and be the head of the corporation. And the man who left had kept with the vision of the corporation. In the beginning, the corporation expected him to do this, and that. And at the end, he did it. And people are saying good things about him. What will they say about me from the day I started then the society will still change.
EPIC. Okay, I will just incorporate it in EPIC. You see, EPIC stands for efficient, productive, incorruptible, and citizen-centered. Our public service should be efficient. Our public service, meaning public service leaders, should be efficient. They should be productive. They should be incorruptible. And they should be citizen-centered. With this in place, they would leave lasting institutions, legacies that are institutionalized, and would promote governance at its best at the public sector. Because public office is public trust held for the citizens. And every public officer, knowing that, if he or she does not know that, there's a problem already. That's why training is required. That is why capacity building is required for public officers. To remind them that they are not holding personal offices, they are holding public offices. They are holding public trust. And as such, they should be embodiments of the core values of the public service. They should be embodiments and of the public service rules, external circulars and regulations that should guide them in the conduct of their affairs in public service. Knowing that one day they will be called to give accountability. They will give account, they are still watching. And they should be operating in transparent environment. Simply, what do you mean of accountability? The ability to account. So one day they will be called to account for their time in office. And which the legacy they have left behind will now speak to how efficient they were in office, how productive they were in office, how incorruptible they were in office, and most importantly, how citizen-centered were their policies when they are in office, to ensure that value is gotten for what they were when they were in office. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. A round of applause again, please, for the doctors.
All right. Thank you so much. My name is Sharon Michael Olubakari. I'm strategic monitoring and evaluation expert. I'm also alumni of EDC. So to my question, I know that Dr. Emeka Wetali, Dr. Kyle were fantastic driving initiative and systems in the public sectors and legal state and federal government. But when you look at it critically, you discover that what 200 billion to 500 billion goes into our government every month as allocation. So when you look at that and you begin to query what happens to the leadership as it affects most of the people, most of the larger percentage of the masses, we talk about masses, it's actually inside a grassroots. So how do we measure, how do we monitor activities at these levels of governance? And how do we make sure that we put the system in place to make sure that what goes there is being accounted for? And also, I also want to say that when you talk about appointing people, right people into the office, you don't have a system yet that has gotten to that stage of people deciding who's right to be in the public office. Right now, so I know that I've done a couple of work with few public offices. So I want to see that, irrespective of who gets into the office, how do we ensure that they work with the systems at this grassroots level? Because if we can take care of what happens here, I think larger percentage of our population will be sorted out. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the brilliance of Victor. So the two doctors. Now, Dr. Phil said something that policy formulation, as we are now, is no longer a problem in Nigeria. To the best of my mind, I agree to that, right? Because we have researchers coming up with several recommendations on a daily basis. Now, I think Dr. Okoyefa will be able to do justice to my question. Implementation, feedback, with respect to citizens' engagement. Can you share more light on this side? That's Dr. Okoyefa. That's my question.
Thank you very much. My name is Ayola. So my question, I have two questions. So the very first question, going from inside shared perspective for people, governance not being wrapped around the personality of the particular leader in the position, but it being being something that is institutionalized. So I would like to, bring that into my question with respect to Dr. Okwepa's experience in the Nigerian Railroad Corporation. So, Sam, what do you think? Are the things to put in place? For example, I would really appreciate your efforts in ensuring that things work within your own sector, within your own organization. So I'm thinking about when you leave, what's going to happen, the next person that is going to be there. Because the kind of conversations that you are experiencing or examples that you are giving, I find them very joyful because I feel like, wow, you are doing a lot. So I'm thinking if another person is to come in, would that same person have the same heart, carry the same value that you hold in making sure that things are working? So how do we institutionalize those values in the Nigerian Railroad Corporation? Okay, I had the opportunity to travel to the UK recently, and then I used the railway system. I mean, I was very fresh in the UK. There was nobody to guide me. My siblings were there. But from the airport down to where my siblings were, I was able to use the railway system, and it was very, very seamless. It was very, very efficient. Then imagine me coming back to Nigeria 2 weeks after, and then I needed to move from the Lagos airport, and then I was stuck for long hours. I was like, oh my god, I wish I had the same experience I had when I went to travel to the UK. So I'm just thinking, and then also, I'm sorry that I'm having a lot of, and then another question is, so how can we institutionalize good values? How can we institutionalize good governance, right? And then my next question now goes down to, what things do you think we can do to bring up the younger generation in terms of like culturing them in good governance? For example, you have many people, young people who just want to pursue their career, who want to do all of that in the private sector, and most people are not really considering coming into the public sector and just to, bring in those values. So what do you think can be done to, I don't want to say lure this kind of people into the public sector so that they can serve and then bring good governance to the people? Those are my questions.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to appreciate this forum for bringing us together to discuss about public governance. But I'm Paul James by name. I came all the way from Ibadan, and I'm a farmer. I'm in the agri sector. I wanted to have conversations with the public sector, the government, and those who are representing us to see how we can relate with you, because it's like there's a divide. The public do not understand what is happening there, and up there they send message and they don't come down to us. It's like there's a deep divide. And it's from last year, I'm speaking from my own perspective of last year, that got me interested into public sector. I'm a farmer. My farm is just close to the terminal, so that's a very good innovation. I'm happy for that. Yeah, in Ibadan precisely. Yes, please. Yes, yeah. We'll be using it to send goods down to Lagos, so that's very important to us. We are grateful for that innovation. So, it occurred to me that the government built systems, they built structures. And as Dr. Deborah said, it's like when you put your glasses, you begin to notice that the government built a lot of structure. The government is working, they build a lot of structure. But so what we've come to understand is that there is no maintenance culture for those structures. When I went to the train station, I was so happy. I didn't know Nigerians could have such good life. Like, we can enter train with AC. I felt so happy, and the payment was seamless. Like, we could book online. That was something innovative. But what is already running through our mind? What would this thing be like in the next 8 years, 12 years? Will it still be good like this? So I want to know that sir, you're doing amazingly well, and I want to know how you want to continue this structure in the railway sector, like from the previous things we know. Because if you go to other railway track in the state, you will see how dilapidated it is. But these new ones, they're very fine and beautiful. How can we maintain that? That's the first one. Then the second question is, sir, in the place of government and public, how do we really build this gap that we can have conversation and you get to interact with us what we really need? When I come to Lagos, if I'm losing my way, I don't bother myself. I just go to the last man and ask, where do I take this? And they direct you. When I was coming here, the same thing. He just said, go down, do this. And I said, okay, this is nice because you can trust the public sector to guide you. So what am I saying in essence? How can we build the structure that enables us to interact more with the government, to know our pain points, and also we know that they are for us and not against us? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question, sir. That question borders on local governments. And that's grassroots government and democratic. They've been the driver of development. Two things: the citizens at the local government level, we need to help them. They need to have the capacity built. They need to be trained to own the community, to own the space. And in owning it, they'll be able to protect all infrastructure or any advancement or growth. The Community Development Association of Society, first of all, we need to work together with the local government authorities. Local government authorities are instituted by the machinery of the government, being a tier of government, and they are protected by the Constitution. These Community Development Associations, we need to work in synergy with them. So the community, we need to know our leaders. So the political quotient of the community will need to be increased. You know, there is emotional quotient, a social quotient. Their government quotient and their political quotient, they need to be trained so they will know how government works and what's expected of leadership at that level, so they can hold them accountable. And now it's so important because this government, by the landmark judgment in 2024, if I remember, when there was a local government autonomy ruling that passed a law that funds should now go directly to local governments. This is to empower government at the local level to be able to carry out more developmental projects towards the needs of our citizens. Projects in healthcare, education, transport, housing, security-wise, and that fund, those funds going to local government chairman, bypassing the state governors, meaning that the local government chairman should account for the monies being given to them to build their community. It now means the citizens of those local governments should tax the local government chairman to know what they are doing with money. The leaders themselves should publish what they are doing with their funds and let the citizens know where their monies are going into. The local government in charge of churches, mosques, markets, primary schools in the locality, those are the things they should hold them accountable. While the state government will provide the bigger infrastructure of electricity, transportation, inter-community transportation, but within the roads within the community, from village to village, the local government should be able to help to start farm roads within, to give them access to move their agricultural products from the farmland to the market square. That's the function of local government. So you could see that the literacy level of the citizens will need to be increased. And then to legislate it, the councils and local government councils should also know their role in enacting policies at their own assembly to bring it up to the State House of Assembly for enactment. So the representatives of the people via those local government councils at the State House of Assembly should be able, the citizens should know who is representing them and take their initiatives to them to be able to legalize it by passing it in law, and once it passes in law at the State House of Assembly, it becomes entrenched, stays in the communities. You can see that gradually community will grow. But the most important plan of all is a strategic plan. Without a strategic plan, a community cannot have a trajectory of growth. Even if it's a 3-year or 2-year, the people must come together at that local level to say, to map out their road and say, this is where we are. This is where we should be. What are the gaps in between they've identified? In other words, they should do a strategic gap analysis that will show them where are the gaps, and they will take ownership. With them, they will now come up with initiatives that they will take to the House of Assembly, say that this is what we need to do. So they must have a plan. That's where community development associations will take the initiative. So each of us, we are all from communities, and I'm sure you all know your community development association. But sometimes we leave these community development associations to, I would say, they are lower than us in literacy. We feel they are market men, they just want to, they identify when they are talking, it doesn't matter to us. No, it does matter to you and I. We need to take interest in what happens to them. Let's not leave it to them because they feel that we are more literate than them. No, let's get interested in what they are doing. If I were you, I would want you to tell them to have a strategic plan. If they don't know how to draft one, you help them show them one. Let them know that they can put this, put that, put it in a simple format, and they will take it. Leaving it to the market women and women to rule. To me, we will still be at the same place and we will still be complaining. So that is key. And then funds that are gathered, then we'll now be able to account for it. So really, the framework matters. And you mentioned something about recruitment. Recruitment is key because I work at the Federal Civil Service Commission. And as a permanent secretary there, our mandate is to recruit, promote, and discipline all federal officers. That's the gateway to the Federal Civil Service. So to show you, the point is that recruitment matters at any level. Local, state, or federal. The key thing is that at those levels, there is a framework, and the framework must reflect national values to be able to get the right people into place. The problem you mentioned, I would rather say that there is an institutional problem. And the institutional problem is as this. We're a large country. Nigeria, from Sokoto to Port Harcourt to Maiduguri to Lagos, that whole expanse of land. In Latin, is terra. Country, the word terra means terrestrial area. So we're already a country. We have moved from being a country to being a state because we have institutions of state. We have the police, we have the army, we have the judiciary, we have the legislature, we have the executive arm of government. So we have state institutions in place. Then from being state institutions in place, we are now supposed to be moving to a nation. The challenge we have, there's a disconnect between us moving from state to nationhood. Why? Because there are some barriers existing amongst us. The barriers of religion, the barriers of ethnicity, the barriers of where you worship, literacy, where you come from. Because you and I know, if I meet her for the first time, she tells me her name, next time I ask her, which state are you from? Is it necessary? She's a Nigerian. She's a Nigerian, I'm a Nigerian. Is it that, or she tells me that her name is from my own area of the so she's my sister. Oh, if she's from that, no, okay, you're from this place. But you see, that's our mindset in Nigeria. Because we are still allowing religion, tribalism, ethnicity to permeate our public sector space. That is preventing us to becoming a nation. India is a country. She has more than one language there. But they speak, that is, they have a generality that they preserve their culture, their Indian culture. Same as Japan, same as China. They were colonized by the colonialists, but they did not throw away their natural values. But we here, we are colonized by, we threw away so many things and imported it. And so we are still having issues in becoming one nation. And that is affecting that issue. That's why you see that the young ones are struggling to have an identity, not in the public space, but in their private space. So a young man in Kano is definitely competing to be something than a young man in Lagos. And it's affecting them at the community, promoting this rural to urban migration. Why can't they stay in the villages and take charge of that place? No, they're running to the village, thinking that, to the city, thinking that there's more life in the city. And the city is choked up. And the ideas are having issues. And that's why having more problems in the youth with music, with drugs, with so many things affecting them. Nobody wants to go and become a local government chairman. They won't leave it for the dogs. They won't leave it for the market. Nobody's doing the thing. But the local government chairman should be, a professor can become a local government chairman. Yes. Now, honestly, I as a medical doctor, because that's my background in training, I'm a medical person by training, though I'm a political today, I can become a local government chairman. Yeah? So that's really, that question is deep. It goes to local governance, citizen engagement at that level, and coming up fully with a strategic plan for the citizens to own that community and own that space. You and I know, if you go to London, you could see that the counties, the districts, they know everybody. Once you come into a local place in UK or in America, the neighbors know themselves. They know you're a stranger. Because there's already services that provided the who to know who at that level, but not in our own community here. So we have a lot of work to do with local governance here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time, so I would crave the indulgence in the response of the remaining questions.
Okay, thank you.
That we treat them. But the next questions, I'm going to try to batch them together. The questions from Moses, Koko, and Paul regarding the railway system and really implementation of feedback, maintaining development, and institutionalizing what has been done so far. So, Dr. Kwefa, if you could just take those questions, touching on it.
Thank you, Dr. I'm just going to make a comment on this, Dr. We debated it during in Lagos. The wrong people are running our local government.
Sure.
Yeah. Giuliani was a local government chairman. Mandani, New York local government chairman. What's the name of the deputy to Kamala Harris started as a local government councillor. Most people you see in the American Senate legislature, they started as councillors. Our younger people are not interested. They just want to go to the banks and they want to be appointed. No, they should go and contest first. Go and start as councillors. From councillor you become chairman. When you are professionals running the local government like a computer, there's nothing wrong with the rules. And I can tell you that's why you see some resemblance in Lagos better than anywhere else. Lagos has a system, even though it's still not good. See how the wrong people there. Fashola Pussy requested then that nobody should be allowed to run for local government chairman if he has not been to cabinet before. Minimum, or a former member of the House of Assembly. If we start bringing in the right people, it's change. Seriously speaking, I'll just make one comment to solve all this, match all the questions together. The first thing any government should think about for sustainability, there must be legislation, status, policies, number one. When you have the rules set. Number two is the structures. You want to solve a problem, create the rules to do it. Whether by enacting the law, the statutes. After you have done that, create a structure to implement it. Arising from the law. So I'll give you an example. We want to solve traffic problem in Lagos. You create the last mile law. Not that you create last mile before the law. You create the last mile law. And the last mile law specifies that you should have an organization called last mile. So you create last mile, which is the structure. Then you now create the processes. So three things. Structure, statute, structure, and process. When you have the process and the rules, the standard operating procedures, the way they do it, the ticketing, and then the institution will be sustainable. And that is why every actually created about 15 to 20. Fashola created about 15 to 20 institutions. They are still sustainable because they follow that path of how to make projects sustainable. But when you start the thing, you don't know you fail. Then if you do that, how do you now institutionalize good values? It is by your processes they are enacted in your laws and the structures you have created to make sure they work. So if they are not working, people will say, is it not the same institution? Why are you not doing the right thing? They will call your attention to it. To be specific, I have answered your question on mentoring. We need to mention the younger people of today. I was a member of Senate of a university before I was that. Lagos State University. I was the youngest member of Senate. I think I was 27 or 28 when I got into Senate. No, I think I was 24. I can't remember again. I went there by election to represent congregation. And when I talked, the vice chancellor of the schools. Because when I was in the university, I went to the best university of Illinois. When I was in the university, I was involved in what goes on campus. I was a student representative council. I won election through a by-election. I represented university before vice chancellors. I represented university at panel discussing all activities of students to be expelled. So I have been trained. I was president National Student of Lagos. I have been trained. I have been mentored by the likes of Bala Usman, Wole Shoyinka, Professor Yebode. They taught us how to be good activists. But what do you see now? They don't do anything. Then the next thing, they want to be president. They want to be governor. None of them wants to be councillor. So those are things the younger people, the current senior leaders, Obembambele was under 26 when he led the most effective revolt in this country of our own generation. The SAP riot, bigger than NSAS. He was just president of NAS. He was student of the University of Benin. The government changed the rules of employment and asked every Nigerian youth who does not have a job to go to the local government, nearest to Imo State, and they gave them job. That was by the Nigerian Association of Nigerian Students. So things have changed in this country, come from not NSAS, that's disruptive, leaderless. They need to learn from people. Muiz was commissioner at 32. If I was in Nigeria, when they would take, I would be a senator as of it. Okpemi was in the cabinet before he was 40. So there's nothing like too young to run. They have always been running. Everybody in my local government councils are young people below the age of 30 councillors. So all those stories parading the public is destructive to our young people. They need to be mentored. Go and read the Bible. Go and read the Quran. There's nobody God used that doesn't create a mentor for them. So when we open our minds to those kind of things, The younger people are. Then on the railway, let me tell you, Nigerian Railway used to be Nigeria. When the president, the governor general of Nigeria is not around, the MD of Railway acts for as the president. That was the Nigerian Railway. Then suddenly, after independence, we kept it. Colonial people ran it well. And Railway was borrowing Nigeria money. When Nigeria is broke, Railway will give money. Then they were carrying for produce. Then we came in and, like I said, we messed it up. For 60 years, we did nothing. Now we started doing it the wrong way. So, system will work. The first thing that makes a system work, the system was built to work. It is we. Our institutions are there. But when we now get in there, we destroy them. There was nothing wrong with railway. There was nothing wrong with last one. There was nothing wrong with civil service. But bring the wrong person to where the civil service, he will turn the whole thing upside down. We will just be putting the only people from his village. So those are, we need to search ourselves. And it starts from our university system, our tertiary institution. What are we teaching them? People are telling you to go and teach code, teach. It's not the only thing they learn in university. It's not the code. What we learn in university is to be total men. Anybody who passes through a tertiary institution must come out as a total man. That's what they taught me in my own university. From the day I matriculated, the vice chancellor said, this university was created for the development of total men. And they still tell me, no. Another university, this university was created to take care of the interests of the northern people. So what do you think people will come out of that university? They'll be facing northern interests. Another university, so different things. We need to have culture around institutions. When you have those cultures, I've met big people tell me that parents and grandparents work the railway. These are chief executives. They are ready to help us because that system works for a point. So there are systems in Nigeria that works, and we must learn to take. And let me say this: when Lagosians were asked, should we put last mile off the road? They said, don't try it. For one day, they said, don't try it by poll, 99%, because last mile was becoming too difficult to bear with. They carry your tire, they carry your vehicle, they give you a big. Like I say, this one lie is too much now. So then the governor said, can I put them up for a day? Don't try it. They stay with collapse. Do you know why? Because the creation was deliberate. And today, that institution, thank God the current president created, is the best thing to happen to public service in Nigeria. A system that has been copied by almost all states. Some people copy last man law with the errors inside it. I consult from many countries. Many states. They copied our law, last man law there. And all the errors we have found in it, they copied it. And they would ask us to come and help them set it up to work. Then you tell them, this, they say we don't want to do, it's working in Lagos. So there are things that are worked in Nigeria. Another thing that is about to happen, that will change the way we think, is the CNG program.
Yes.
So we need to watch out how we send people to go and manage those institutions. So there are institutions in Nigeria that are proven to be replicable. That even when you put a bad person, they will remove him. I know somebody will put there 6 months. Then I told governor, say this one, we can't confirm it. Another governor can confirm the guy, the same governor kicked him out within 6 months. So when an institution follows the rules, how they set it up, statute, legislation laws, follow structures, now follow procedures, lay down in his rules, then anybody who does something wrong can be anyone who doesn't perform. There are people who perform, don't vote for it, they will not perform. And finally, let me say funding is the reason why a lot of our institutions are not maintained. It's not as if they don't want to. When the bombing happened in Kaduna 2022, I think that was October 20, the railway people fixed the track, not CCC. When it happened at Asham on August 26, 2025, the railway staff fixed the track. When it happened in the engines, the CCC says the car is not good for fixing. The Nigerian engineers fixed it. The one that happened in Itape, those guys have fixed everything. So the same guys who can fix problems, they can maintain it. But if you don't provide the necessary funding, as we, I don't like here we don't have maintenance cost. Now, Bobo, we have. What we don't have is the funds are not appropriately, like you mentioned, budgeted for those kind of things. If you don't budget for it, it won't happen. But if you budget for it, Nigerian engineers, give it to them. Nigerian artisans, Nigerian technicians, they will change. Why do you fly into London? And when you are landing, you start looking up. But when you get to MM2, you know queue up. It's the system. When you feel the heat in the airport, you don't behave properly. When you get there, you see everybody does it, you notice it's fine, everything is fine, the staff are well dressed, it'll be yato, you change. So I just want us to have positive attitude. Institutions are already on ground. Some are terrible because the rules are not complete. If you follow the rules of how to do things, standard operating procedures, you have systems, you have everything, it will work. Thank you very much. And I want us to be positive.
Thank you.
I see opportunity. Those who complain will complicate issues.
Thank you.
Those who murmur will murder destiny. So don't join them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Our distinguished panelists, Dr. Obi and Dr. Ofefa, for their valuable contribution, and our moderator, Nemo, for expertly guiding the conversation. We are equally grateful to the British Council for its support, and of course the Society for Corporate Governance for its continued commitment to strengthening leadership, integrity, and governance. We deeply appreciate the presence of all our distinguished dignitaries here today, from the parastatals to ministries to government-owned enterprises to Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment, Code of Conduct Bureau to Bureau of Public Enterprises, the Federal Civil Service Commission, the Nigerian Railway Commission, the Federal Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, the Federal Ministry of Justice, the Lagos State Government, the Nigerian Communication Commission, the Federal Inland Revenue Services, the Ministry of Finance and Corporation, the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, and Accra State governments, to mention a few. So we had everybody present, so we thank you for that. Your presence underscores the importance of this conversation and the collective commitment to building stronger and more effective public institutions. To our board members, especially from my own end, our partners, our stakeholders, and all participants joining us physically and virtually, thank you for your presence, for the engagement, for the contribution. As we leave, may we take the insights from the forum beyond this room and translate them into better leadership, stronger institution, and improved performance, as well as greater public value. Once again, I thank you for being part of this important occasion. This forum is hereby formally closed. Thank you, and God bless you all.